Hello, listeners. Mallory Wilsey here, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network. So, everyone is talking about AI these days, but not enough people are taking the time to unpack how AI will impact the future of higher education. And that's why we launched the Generation AI podcast, co hosted by Artis Cadu, CEO of Element 451, and JC Bonilla, Chief Data Officer at VaynerMedia. Artis and JC have worked on large language models for nearly 2 decades and have remarkable technical knowledge around how they work and how generative AI will impact the future of higher ed. Generation AI isn't just about understanding artificial intelligence, it's about being part of the AI revolution in education. Tune in, get informed, and be inspired to innovate in your educational space with the power of artificial intelligence. You can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search Generation AI wherever you get your podcasts.
It's like that old school kind of Twitter, people actually going back and forth and having legit dialogue in the comments section, social media posts that you just don't see very much anymore.
Welcome to the EduData Podcast, a podcast that serves as your weekly guide to the data driving higher education. We are your hosts. I'm Jamie Boggs.
And I'm Timothy Davis. Join us every Friday for weekly breakdowns of the most important data, trends, and topics in higher education.
The EduData Podcast is a part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below.
Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the EduData Podcast. I'm Timothy Davis, joined by Jamie Boggs. Hey, Jamie.
Hey, Timothy. How are you, man?
I'm feeling like I really got the intro kind of ironed out now.
Yeah.
In those early episodes, it's kind of find my way through the intro, but now I feel like I've got it down kind of canned, and I'm wondering if I ought to shake it up.
Finding your footing is tough in situations like this. Finding your voice, finding your flow, and no, I think you're there, man. I think you're there. I don't think you shake it up just yet.
Okay. Yeah. We'll keep at it until it gets really boring. Today we are talking about a LinkedIn post from Preston Cooper. He is a researcher at the Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunities, which is kind of a policy think tank. And he put together a ROI data set that he shared some time ago and has been posting about since. But basically, his data set kind of blends together a number of different publicly available data sets and surveys, both from a couple of survey houses and the U.S. government, to determine ROI for various degree programs and various institutions. And so with that data set built, they published a white paper on it and then some LinkedIn posts. But we wanted to share this particular LinkedIn post because it had such a great comment section. It's like that old school kind of Twitter, people actually going back and forth and having legit dialogue in the comments section, social media posts that you just don't see very much anymore. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Legitimate, respectful dialogue. Like, I learned more from the comment section, or as much as I did from the article itself, because it's conversation about potential limitations of the study, responses from Preston, who gives some great responses to explain away some of the concerns, but address some others. And yeah, it's a great learning tool. I generally am of the ilk to never read the comments of anything I post because my skin's not thick enough. But Preston did a great job here responding to everything, I thought.
Yeah, this post really illustrates we talk about the science side of statistics and analysis a lot, but this is really more on the art side where, we're looking at the data and we're fusing it with our own knowledge and our own understanding of the market or of trends of the industry and trying to make sense of it and trying to make decisions off of it and evaluate the quality of the results that we get. And so we get a lot of good examples of that happening in this comment section. So without further ado, let me just go ahead and read the post, and then we can read some of the comments. And for the commenters, I think we'll mention them by name, but we'll try not to give them like full introductions because we could spend a lot of time doing that. We'll, of course, link to this post in the show notes, so definitely check that out and read along with us. And you can dig into the folks that are in the midst of this conversation, the who's who of this social media post on your own time. But anyway, to launch into the post, here we go. From Preston, higher education aspires to be the great equalizer, but according to my analysis of college return on investment, that ROI data set that we covered in the other episode, colleges serving mostly low-income student populations produce much lower ROI than schools serving rich students. Among bachelor's degree programs, median ROI is nearly 3 times higher at schools serving the highest income students than schools serving the poorest students. Choice of major is part of what's going on. Schools serving high-income students more frequently offer engineering, for example, and major matters. You'd much rather be an engineering student at a low-income school than a fine arts major at a high-income school. But even within majors, significant gaps remain by socioeconomic status. Consider communications and journalism. At a high-income school, the median ROI of this field of study is nearly $300,000, but outside these rich institutions, the ROI of communications and journalism programs is abysmal, just $32,000 a year salary for the lowest SES colleges. Fortunately, there are shining stars among colleges mostly serving low-income students. Read the full post at his website, which he linked. And then the chart that's shared is a kind of scatter plot by distinct categories of major, right, that I believe are the Department of Ed categories. Mm-hmm. So just reading kind of off the top: engineering, computer science, nursing, economics, business, science and engineering, mathematics, fine arts, education, humanities, etc. So those categories that the Department of Education defines, and then that is the y-axis, and the x-axis is the return on investment that is calculated from his data set of his sort of blended data set that he used for his study. And on the left side, we kind of get into the negative ROI range. He calculates negative ROI for fine arts degrees, for a few education degrees. Humanities degrees are kind of teetering. English and linguistics, psychology and social work kind of teetering towards negative ROI, where engineering, computer science, nursing, economics tend to trend up to the top end of that ROI scale, or the right side end of that ROI scale. And then each of these measurements is broken up by socioeconomic status of the school's student body. So we've got the highest socioeconomic status student body down to the lowest socioeconomic status student body. A lot of S's in that.
A lot of S's.
Any other things stick out to you immediately from this particular chart?
I'm coming from a place of somewhere that I went to Berea College, which only serves low-income students. Like I've mentioned that before on the podcast, there's a cutoff. If your family makes too much money, you can't go there. So my immediate footing on this was being defensive, to say, hey, don't talk like my school did not give me an opportunity to have high earnings or whatever. So that's where I was coming from. So when I'm looking at this chart, my focus was more, I think, looking away from the socioeconomic status part of the data to try to find exceptions to the rule, or to try to find other explanations like within the majors, which I think is very telling. And we can get into some of the questions about majors in the comments as well. But yeah, that's I think the major piece is something that you and I have talked about before, but that's just as interesting to me with this chart.
Absolutely. And these charts sort of have significance beyond just like understanding what degrees sort of pay off. There's some folks in the comment section that were talking about how these sort of measurements might better apply Department of Education funding to specific institutions, and that accreditation could be reliant on ROI outcomes, that financial aid could be, for an institution, the institution's ability to distribute financial aid could be reliant on ROI outcomes. So these sort of studies have significance for the landscape of higher education. So it's not just sort of playing around with this data to find interesting tidbits. This is something that could potentially shape higher ed policy at the national level. So very timely subject for sure. The first comment that I wanted to point out was from Rebecca Pare. Forgive me for the pronunciation, who is a author and consultant in the higher ed space. And her first takeaway is that the results aren't surprising because salary is such a problematic, highly biased, and generally insufficient indicator of ROI. When companies begin paying people of color and women the same as white males, I'll have more confidence in the earnings data as a measure of ROI, but we're far from that. Students also consider ROI as more than earnings. How might we begin expanding our notion of value and ROI beyond generally biased outcomes data? I think that that's an interesting question, and that gets more to the side of like research design and how we want to build the data set that gives us results, right? So in analysis or in sort of popular communication about data, we tend to refer to the data in really absolute terms, right? Well, the data just says that.
Right.
Okay, well, it's very important to consider where data comes from and how data is formulated to arrive at results, right? Because as we talked about, this is a data set that is blended from multiple different places. And so those government data sets, those survey data sets, I would say are probably pretty strong in the sense that they are representative and that they are robust in terms of the number of results that they found. You know, if this is coming from census data, we're talking about everybody in the country. So, you know, that's a solid representation. But also in the way that things are calculated and what is used to calculate ROI. And Rebecca's argument here is that salaries, which we hadn't mentioned to this point, is how this data set calculates ROIs. And of course, Rebecca mentions that these salaries are not guaranteed or equitable across the board for all identity groups. But and the other point that I think we could bring up there about salaries is salaries are also negotiable. Right, your ability to achieve a higher salary, in addition to the identity groups that you are within, is also somewhat dependent, or can be improved, or might not be as successful, depending on how much you're sort of playing the game to get a higher salary. So the salary as a metric of ROI is perhaps not as reliable as some other metrics might be. And to kind of tack off this point based on other podcast episodes that we've covered, perhaps wealth is a more meaningful measure here than just income data.
Some other commenters here mentioned social capital, and generally when we're talking about this low SES group, there's cycles of poverty, and even the value to a family of earning $50,000 if you've come from some extreme poverty is still, if you measure that, there's no way to say it means this much to this family and future generations for this person to earn 50 than it does for this person to earn 200,000. So there's that impact, and people brought that up. And Summer M, who works in marketing, commented that also consider that higher income households and individuals have better social capital built up already. They have connections, they have opportunities that people from lower income households don't have. So that's a factor that could be measured in here as well. And it is commented, of course, I feel like the first big question was, why are you assigning this to the institution when this is about income? But Preston points out that they did account for demographics and income of the families going into school to kind of rule that out, to say, yes, even if two schools are putting out the same or getting the same results on the back end with income coming in, we've accounted for that, and the lower income serving institutions still get a lower ROI, which is, I think, helpful to know, because I think there was, from several commenters, an immediate reaction of, this isn't about the institutions, but to some degree it is, because that's where they're recruiting from. But there are a lot of other factors with those schools that came up as well.
Hey there, it's Mallory, Chief Strategist of Enrollify. Higher ed is facing a leadership crisis. The demands on today's college and university leaders are skyrocketing, and talent is leaving the industry at an unprecedented rate. New leaders like you are emerging, but no one is getting the proper training to be successful. Well, Enrollify is here to change that. Our new course, Lessons in Leadership, taught by Dr. Carrie Phillips, will prepare you to be a confident, empathetic, and effective leader. From systems thinking to adaptive leadership, building culture to handling difficult decisions, this comprehensive online course is perfect for new and aspiring leaders. Don't wait. The course starts September 9th, and for a lucky group of 26 students, we have the option to add interactive sessions with Dr. Phillips for personalized guidance. Visit Enrollify.org to learn more.
And what I assume that to kind of speak to that last point, and that was a comment brought up by Scott Carlson, who's a writer at the Chronicle of Higher Education. He said, you're assigning outcomes to the colleges that the institution probably had little to do with. You're saying that the institution is wholly responsible for a student's ability to earn income after graduation when the institution is not necessarily. The institution is not making you apply for jobs. The institution is not making you switch jobs to go to a higher salary. The institution is not telling you what to study, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So that seems to be kind of the argument that Scott's making. And to what you said, Preston's response to that is that I think what he's saying there is that they normalized ROI as a like percentage increase, perhaps, from point A to point B, with the journey going through college. So you started at this, which is some normalized number, and then you increased your earning potential to this, which is, again, some other normalized number, and the percentage increase for low socioeconomic schools was lower than high socioeconomic schools. And while that's a meaningful thing to do statistically, it also doesn't necessarily account for, kind of like you said, all the other, in that other comment from Summer, all the other variables that influence your end result salary that you can attain, right? So if you come from a high-income family and you have a rich, robust network of wealthy people that your family interacts with at the country club or in the circles that your parents sort of run in, and then you go to a elite institution and you further that network with the people that are connected there, and then you end up in a high-profile company, a Fortune 500 company or whatever, you're going to make more than if you ended up in a small consulting firm in a smaller city,
right?
Something like that. So that sort of thing. Yeah, of course. So there's just more money. There's more money concentrated at the top, is what that's sort of telling me. That low socioeconomic serving institutions don't have access to, because they don't have that network.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to note that you can't account for everything. There are always going to be whatabouts in these studies. What about geography? What about the makeup of a household? Is this a single parent household? Is this a guardianship household? There are all those, like, you're not going to be able to include everything. So to normalize and get rid of the noise of the income is a really great start and an important piece for the study. But there's always room to grow and improve, right?
For sure. And another point to bring up here, and this is one of the arguments that I think Preston made in the thread with Scott Carlson, is if you don't want to assign responsibility to the colleges, the fact that remains that these are the outcomes and students should make their college decisions accordingly. To which Scott says, what decisions are they making exactly with this data? It's not clear to me how this helps low-income students who often are highly limited in where they can go in the first place, and what highly limited in the decisions that they can make about college and major. So yes, another thing to consider there, right? So there's kind of the side of this data set might affect policy, but there's also, I guess, this sort of buyer beware kind of argument to be made about how students or consumers can use this income. But I think to Scott's point too, like and this might be something that we actually might have data on. It might be interesting to dig into this problem, is that how many options do low-income students conceivably have access to? I mean, in that study about wealth that we looked at, right, we talked about how that's an incredibly limiting factor, that students from low wealth families are often entirely dependent on what they can get through financial aid and what they can pay for themselves. So yes, that is a huge limiting factor that would affect those low socioeconomic group students that would not necessarily affect high socioeconomic group students. So yeah, it's interesting to, like, if you're a high income earning student and you are like going to college with a game plan and you're really surveying the market and picking the right major and sort of playing the game in that way, to bring it back around to the game metaphor, right? Maybe you can do that. Maybe you can use this data set. But if we're talking about creating equitable opportunities for everybody and advancing everyone's standing in our society, and we're focused on these low income groups, then yeah, it might not be something that's even actionable to them. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that kind of ties together. I think that goes really well paired with the measurability of ROI. Because if you look at what goal does this student have, I'm not trying to stereotype folks, but if you're from a higher income family, there's expectation that you're going to continue to be a high earner. And one of your goals is likely going to be, I need to find a high paying job. For a lot of individuals from low socioeconomic status, it is about barrier breaking, but it's also about a lot of times going back and serving your community. So maybe I have the opportunity to go work for a Fortune 500 company through my institution, but I'm going to choose to go back to my small town and work locally so that I can serve the community. I'm going to make a lot less money, but I'm also living in a place that has a lower cost of living, and those things aren't factored here either. But I think that does pair in not only the opportunities, but the intentions of people coming out of these schools.
This study assumes that each student that goes to college is looking for a net positive or an ROI increase in their earning potential, when they very well could not be, or they very well could take opportunities that are low paying, low income providing, or the opportunities that don't have the ability to provide them the same level of income that they would have at other opportunities, because of other goals, such as serving their community, such as being connected to the things that are meaningful to them, which is not necessarily more money. So yeah, that's a great point. And then I guess ultimately the question becomes, should the federal government subsidize the endeavors of students that are not income earning?
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great question, because then it's the government's ROI is going to be lower there.
Right. And I would say, yeah, like and maybe this is circling all the way back to what Rebecca initially said, like we should look at meaningful measures of ROI. More robust measures of ROI that factor in a lot of different things rather than just income earning potential.
Absolutely. I can't believe we've talked for 20 minutes. I thought we were just getting started here. But we do need to wrap up. So this is a good study. It provides good quality points coming out of it. There are good learnings to come from this. But there are limitations, obviously, like there are with every study. So the purpose of this episode was to point out questions that people commonly have, and how discourse and communication in a respectful way can, the rising tide lifts all boats, right? Like, let's question each other, let's challenge each other in a respectful way so that we can all have a better learning perspective. And I think Preston does a great job presenting what this is and what this isn't, and it can be useful for institutions and families alike, but always more work to be done.
100%. Yeah. Thank you to everybody that participated in this comment section and gave us some great reading on social media. That's always much appreciated. But yeah, with that, I think we'll wrap it up. Definitely have a look at this comment section and at this post and some of the other work from these contributors, and we'll see you in the next episode.
The EduData podcast is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like the other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month. We've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional.
Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Jamie Hunt, Artis Cadu, Dustin Ramsdale, Jeremy Tiers, and so many of your other favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451. the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.